Welcome to our Saturday Simulcast. Tom Dienhart will join me for our first segment. We're going to do this in 2 or 3 segments today, combined also with Dave Neff and Mark Carney from Boilermaker Alliance. We'll have a little segment with Elliot Bloom, talk about scheduling, and Brian Neubert also will join us. So it's all in advance of what will be one of the biggest days in Purdue basketball, just because the Boilermakers will be taking on Arizona this afternoon. 4:30. Tom, you watched Purdue basketball for a long time, and it's not hyperbole when you think about Purdue has never played a number 1 team as a team when they were ranked this high, 30. Yeah. They were ranked 5, but a lot of intrigue with that one. But it's going to be a big time environment, I would think, in Indianapolis. I know will be in Indianapolis this afternoon.
It's too bad it's not a Mackey Arena, right?
Yeah.
But it's going to be, like I said, a festive environment. The holidays are here. A lot of shoppers downtown. The Colts are playing that afternoon.
Yeah.
So it's going to be, like I said, just kind of a fun atmosphere like you described, Alan. And opportunity looms again for Purdue, right? You set up the stage, I think, correctly. I mean, you know Purdue basketball and football history better than anybody on the planet. And like you said, this may be the biggest non-conference matchup in Purdue basketball history. And I find it hard to believe you could find any argument for that. 1 versus 3. Purdue gets to test itself once again, Alan, against a top 10 opponent, in this case, the number 1 team in America, to further enhance a resume that I'd have to think, Alan, is without peer in America right now, given who Purdue has already beaten this year.
Yeah, it is exactly that. Arizona really good. We know that. These are 2 teams that could see each other again in Chandler, Arizona. That would be, I think both teams would be happy to take that notion if they could make it to the Final Four. Both, one thing they do have in common, a disappointing finish in the NCAA tournament last year. Tommy Lloyd and also Matt Painter trying to get that monkey off their back, but they'll have to wait till March to get that done. But you've got a lot going on. This is obviously a huge, busy time. It's head on a swivel time from a coaching standpoint, from a coverage of the transfer portal, recruiting coming in. It is a moving target. We know I think the number is 21 have left Purdue's program, and now some are starting to come back in. Purdue's had some really big commitments or important commitments, especially on the offensive line, but kind of bring us up to date at least. And again, this could all change in a matter of time in terms of new portal commitments. So a lot going on with respect to that.
Yeah, it all started last Friday, Alan, when Joey Tanona from Notre Dame was the first player to commit to Purdue from the portal. Of course, 4-star recruit, Zionsville, Indiana. Interesting. I don't want to get off on a big tangent here, but he's got a very interesting backstory. He never played a snap at Notre Dame. It's involved in an auto crash that sidelined him, and he's been cleared, and he wants to continue his career at Purdue. So very intriguing pickup, Alan. And then, of course, on Sunday, there was a flurry of, I believe, 4 commitments, 3 offensive linemen and a junior college defensive lineman as well. So we all knew coming into this portal season, which opened December 4th, Alan, that the offensive line was a priority.
Yeah.
Purdue has dove head first into trying to address that. I think the kid from Ball State they got, Corey Stewart, I think he's a starting caliber left offensive tackle, Alan. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts at left tackle. Maybe Marcus Bowe can move inside. I think he's more of a natural guard anyway. DJ Wingfield from New Mexico is another guy who may be a starting caliber guy. At the very least, he'll be a good depth guy too. So those were 2, I think, good gets early on right out of the portal. And Alan, Purdue continues to pursue guys, and this weekend they've got a raft of guys coming in as well. So we may get some more commitments before this weekend's over.
Yeah, it is. Like I said, and then you have signing day, which is Wednesday. Ryan Walter's not necessarily in a different boat than a lot of other coaches because you're trying to hang on. I mean, you've got, again, a couple key guys that have been offered by or visited other schools and one offered as well. Do you expect come Wednesday that class will be what size, do you think, as it all comes to pass? Or is it still too early to tell just because there's so many moving targets?
I think, there's 24 committed now, and I think all 24 of the high school kids should indeed end up following through on their commitments. I know the player you referenced, Corey Beasley, the safety from Cincinnati, the highest rated commit in this class, according to on3.com. Took that official visit to Syracuse last week. He had a relationship with the new Orange head coach, Fran Brown, who's at Georgia. But from what I'm told, Alan, I think Purdue feels like it's in a pretty good spot with Coy Beasley. I still think they do believe he's going to sign with the Boilermakers on Wednesday, December 20th, the first day these kids can do so. So I know there was some angst and anxiety there. There should be anytime a guy who's committed to you is still shopping around, right? But from what I hear, Alan, I get the sense that, again, Purdue feels pretty confident that Coy Beasley's still in the fold for the Boilermakers.
Yeah, when you look at that whole situation, obviously Purdue wants to, the receiver room, transfer portal, and not necessarily the incoming guys, though there may be a couple in there that can help. But talk about that and that need, because right now you're down to just a couple guys with any level of experience, just based on who has left the program, who's entered the portal, so to speak. But that is a huge need for Ryan Walters and company as well.
Yeah, it's pretty bare bones. They lost their top 3 pass-catching receivers to the portal, Alan. You talked about that. We've already seen Deion Burks go to Oklahoma. TJ Sheffield's in the portal. Abdur-Rahman Yassin's in the portal. So those are 3 kind of significant losses, right? And then to a lesser extent, Mershawn Rice is also in the portal. So they need pass catchers, like you said. They've got their junior college kid coming back, Jaden Dixon-Veal. And, of course, don't forget about the kid from Florida Atlantic that came last year and got hurt in camp. Didn't play all last year, Alan. I know staffers thought he was probably going to be their top receiver last year. Again, didn't play a snap. Jamal Adrain is his name. So his rehab has gone well, I'm told. So those are your 2 starting points, right? Purdue's going to host a couple portal targets this week. Wake Forest kid, Jamal Banks, probably the best of the receivers they're looking at right now. He's actually going to Notre Dame too. And then UCLA's Cam Brown. They hosted a kid named Corey Allen from Louisiana Tech last week. So they're kicking some tires, Allen. And I think they want to get at least 2 or 3 portal receivers. And like I said, they had 1 on campus last week, the Louisiana Tech kid, and they got 2 on campus this weekend, the Wake Forest kid and UCLA. So, yeah, if offensive line was the top priority, wide receiver was certainly right after it, Alan.
Now we're going to be talking with Mark Carney and Dave Neff for the Boilermaker Alliance further on in this show. Any notion of, NIL, obviously we don't know specifics and what's happened, but it looks like Purdue's had, not only they've hired a CEO, but maybe a little bit more funding there to get to what they need. Any sense that's not to say negative, but all things are moving in the right direction from that standpoint, it appears, based on what we can tell at this point.
Yeah, I mean, the first full-time CEO dedicated to the Boilermaker Alliance. Alan, before, the leaders of the Boilermaker Alliance were just sort of doing it off to the side. They had full-time jobs, and they were always doing it off the side of their desk, is how it was described to me. Yeah. Now they hired a guy. This is his job, Alan. He was hired to be the CEO president of the Boilermaker Alliance. Dave Neff, 39-year-old businessman with a nice sports background. Alan, from Indianapolis, went to Heritage Christian High School. Miles Coleman's high school, has 4 kids. Sharp. He's like a very sharp guy. I spoke to him for a story last week, and he seemingly checks all the boxes. He's like a young Alan Karpick.
Yeah, right. But that's not the job I want to deal with. I don't know how David is going to do it.
I hope I didn't put any pressure on him. I wrote something next day in 321 about he may be the most important man to Purdue athletics, more important than an administrator, a coach, or a player. We all know, love it or not, you can curse it all you want. NIL, this stuff is here. And if you're not partaking in it, your program's going to suffer. So David Neff is leading the charge. And, of course, they hired somebody else to help them too, Maddie DiDario. And so they've got 2 full-time employees. So, it's good news for Purdue. You got full-time people dedicated to trying to raise money to augment the Purdue athletic profile and to retain talent, Alan, and also to recruit talent as well. So I think a big moment for Purdue athletics and the Boilermaker Alliance to get a guy like David Neff.
Yeah, no doubt. And important, like you said, it's hard to minimize his importance from that standpoint. All right, one of the things there's been a lot of talk from and you've been a big picture guy because you've been around this for a long time. When you look at, the talk about the transfer rule, now they've rescinded that, and I don't even completely understand it but basically it sounds like guys are going to be able to go wouldn't have to worry about waivers. That sounds like that. I'm talking about transferring, without having to deal with that. And then also the timing of all this. And there's been a lot of gnashing of teeth because you've got guys that are going into the portal that are playing in bowl games or Texas's backup quarterback is in the portal, and a lot of that kind of stuff. Do you see, we're all looking for a place where all this stuff lands and there becomes some level of normalcy. Are we getting any closer, or are we getting further away in your view?
Well, I don't think we're any closer yet, Alan, and there still needs to be some more structure. And I'm all for player movement.
Yeah.
Pro player, and I think they should be able to go where they want to go when they want to go. The coaches can, you and I can, right? Yeah. Nobody restricts us. We want to get another job. If I'm a student at Purdue, like your kid Reed, if you want to transfer, you could transfer to 5 schools if you wanted in 5 years. And but I think there does need to be, the pendulum needs to swing back a little bit more to the middle too. I think the schools, the coaching staffs, the programs need some type of structure and normalcy when they're trying to build and create these rosters. It's just chaos. From year to year, you're almost literally building your team. For Purdue, that's certainly the case. You talked about 21 guys in the portal at this point, and I mean, that's a lot of guys leaving on an 85 scholarship roster, Alan. That's easy. I can even do that math. So again, it'd be nice if there was some semblance of a contract of some sort, guys signed that coaches know, hey, I got this guy for at least 2 years. I got this guy for 3 years. So maybe we're getting closer to that. That's above my pay grade. I love listening to people talk about maybe where the future goes, but I think I think the NCAA and others are mindful of trying to be very player friendly because there's a lot of litigation going on right now.
Yeah,
and I want to show that they are being player friendly. But I think at some point, like I said, I think the pendulum needs to swing back and give more balance to the programs and the players, so the schools can have a little easier time of trying to keep rosters together and knowing what they've got year to year.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too with the college football playoff expanding next year to 12, and the fact that that portal opens on December 4th, and if you're a backup quarterback at Ohio State or the starting quarterback at Ohio State. Now I know they're not in the playoff this year. It's you have to kind of get while the getting's good, and it's going to be interesting to see how coaches deal with that. From that standpoint down the road, and like you said. I'm glad that Ryan Walters is going to be 38 here, I think, the next month. It's good he's young and nimble. I don't know how coaches deal with that. And, of course, Ryan seems to be pretty stoic about it all. You have to deal with it, and you have to do the best you can with it and try to put yourself in the best position to build that roster. But it is a challenge.
You're right, Alan. And in the program, we saw Garrett Miller jump in the portal this week, but that was a surprise. That was a surprise. I think 2 players that went in the portal that Purdue would have rather have stayed were Deion Burks and Dylan Downing. They were both bits of a head scratchers, if you will. And again, Purdue's doing what it can to augment and build this roster. Cornerback's another spot, Alan. They have a kid coming in from Eastern Washington they're looking at. I know they've offers to a couple other portal cornerbacks and running back too, right? Talked about Dylan Downing. He jumped in the portal, and Alan, he's probably at least going to be the number 2 running back next year at Purdue. Who knows? Maccabee gets hurt. All of a sudden, you're the starting running back. The only guys they have after Maccabee and Downing were an incoming freshman, Jaheim Merriweather. Then they got a guy who was a true freshman this last year, Christian Womack. I mean, now Downing's gone. They want to look at this Jaheim Merriweather kid in the spring and then decide if they want to portal back. But I think now with Downing gone, I think they need to get a portal back now to get him in for spring football. And Reggie Love from Illinois is a guy they're supposed to host this weekend. So, again, Downing's loss now I think means Purdue needs a portal running back now. They can't go through spring football. Hey, we need somebody. Because right, Alan, that first portal window, the pickings usually a lot better than that first portal window. There's another portal window in the spring from April 15th to the 30th after spring footballs are over. But by then, there's not as much movement, and a lot of the better talent typically is left. And as you know, Alan, when there's scarcity, fewer players available, they get way overvalued, they get way over recruited, and the competition gets that much more fierce for players in that spring portal window.
Yeah, going to be interesting to see Garrett Miller. Who knows? May end up at Louisville. I don't know what to.
He's got a Texas A&M offer.
Yeah. So, and of course, he has an injury to overcome as well in the off season. But Purdue has Max Clare coming back, and George Burhan.
Yeah.
Right. But it's a huge game in the bucket game as well.
Drew Biver. And they got an incoming kid too. It's pretty good. Tavion.
So you've got the tight end room is probably going to be okay, assuming Clare back after injury. So, all right, we can continue to muddle this through because the more we seem certain, the more it'll probably change here before long. But Tom, I appreciate all you're doing for trying to keep an eye on all this. It's head on a swivel time, like we said, through now and through January. Going to be an interesting time as Purdue forms its roster for the 2024 season and beyond. So, Tom, we'll look forward to that, your coverage as well. So we're going to jump to another segment here in a minute. Thank the Union Club Hotel. A reminder also that you can subscribe to GoldandBlack.com, and you can do it as a holiday gift. A great idea. But we'll be back. Our next segment, we'll have David Neff and Mark Carney on here as well. And we'll look forward to that too. So stay tuned. We'll transition right into that. The opportunity for Purdue to play in this game, Brian. You talked to Matt Painter on Thursday. Yes, it's another game, but it's just another ability to showcase what has been in a gauntlet of an unbelievable non-conference schedule for Purdue.
Yeah, I think it's not. I don't think it's overstatement to say this is the strongest non-conference schedule in Purdue history, and I'm only saying that based on the fact I can't imagine there having been one stronger.
Nope.
And Purdue's basically one win away from going unbeaten in the non-conference for the third straight year. That's not what Purdue aspires to this season by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. But to be one win away from running the table against these schedules they've put together the last 3 years is really something. Now, obviously, this last one is going to be the big one because this is, the best team Purdue's played to date, and that says something given what they played in Honolulu and whatnot. But I think it's a good opportunity, obviously, for Purdue to kind of. I don't think being number one matters all that much, and to be honest with you, the way things tend to go when Purdue is number one, do you even want it?
Yeah.
I'd run away from it as fast as I can if I were Purdue, but that's just me. I think that all these experiences in the non-conference season, should bolster Purdue for when it matters most later in the year. Now, obviously, Purdue's played tough schedules the last 2 years, and that's not necessarily worked that way, but should this year. I think Arizona's level of athleticism and skill, coupled with the legitimate size they have to go against Saturday, I think is as close to a complete team as Purdue's going to see all year long, and there's not going to be anything you can run into in March that you haven't already seen and then some between what you're going to see in Arizona, what you saw in the 3 games in Honolulu, and you still had Arkansas on there, albeit just an exhibition. You still had Alabama on there, and
Xavier,
I don't know how good they are, but I think that Purdue should be ready for anything here in a couple months, provided they stay healthy, provided they're consistent. There's not a lot of red flags with Purdue right now. The turnover thing is going to be an issue, but other than that, they're not the best defensive team in the country, but I don't think anybody realistically expected them to be, nor do they necessarily need to be as good as they are on offense. But I think that they should be this should turn out to be a situation here in a couple of months where you look back on this and you say that everything Purdue dealt with here in November and December really, really helped them come, the end of February into March.
Yeah. Some of the national narrative, I think, and again, for what it's worth, physicality of the guards, and what will be an interesting thing, Caleb Love, obviously, with the North Carolina transfer, via other places as well will be an interesting matchup situation. Obviously, with also Arizona's got size in the backcourt. Purdue has skill in the backcourt. Certainly, Braden Smith certainly doesn't need to take a backseat to anybody. Fletcher Lawyer, his ability to defend in this situation it's always been being tested, no matter who you're playing against. But talk about that. I mean, what are some of the things, that when you look at a game like this in a quasi home game, but not a complete home game, certainly. But you're playing a team in Arizona that's got a lot of skill, a lot of weapons in a lot of different places.
Yeah, but so did Marquette, did Gonzaga, so did Tennessee, so did Alabama. They all had big guards too. And I think those teams, what they had in the backcourt stacked up pretty favorably with what Purdue's going to see against Arizona. Now, what those teams didn't necessarily have was the size up front and the more complete package, the defensive MO, even though I think Tennessee's a really good defensive team.
Yeah.
I think this is just top to bottom going to be the best team Purdue's played. I haven't had a chance to see Arizona on TV at all this season. But I know what they're all about. And they're very good, obviously, and very talented. And, Purdue's going to have its hands full. But I don't think Braden Smith's going to take a backseat to anybody. I think Braden Smith's one of the best guards in the country. And it's not like, having a 5'10" point guard and having a 170-pound shooting guard is anything new for Purdue. I mean, think of how many games they've won the last couple of years with that. I mean, their guards are no smaller, no slighter than they were in Honolulu.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of matchups that are going to be challenging, but, Purdue's overcome those challenges at like a 90% success rate here the last 18 months or so. So I don't think that's as big an issue as people want to make it out to be. The other thing is Arizona doesn't have Zach Edey, and Arizona doesn't have a lot of what Purdue has. I think people tend to look at what Purdue doesn't have versus teams like this instead of looking at what the other team doesn't have that Purdue does. And there's one Zach Edey in college basketball, and he wears a Purdue jersey. So it's a pretty big advantage.
Yeah.
And I think you have one of the best point guards in college basketball. And it doesn't matter that he's 5'10". He was 5'10" in Honolulu too when he played against Tyler Kolek, and he was 5'10" this past weekend when he played against what Alabama had. And I don't think it matters. In fact, I if I were Purdue, I'd be telling him before the game, "Hey, you're only 5'10". Hey, you're only 5'10". Just piss him off.
Yeah.
And you'd probably get the best version of him.
Yeah. A mad Braden Smith seems to be a good Braden Smith. Video aside, he's about as competitive as it gets. Now, Matt Painter talked on Thursday about the rotation and how that works, and you've documented that well and things that you've written and talked about this year. It is an interesting situation because you are 10 deep. That hasn't changed. There's going to be guys. He talked about how whether it's Miles Colvin or Ethan Morton, Mason Gillis, there's always going to be somebody that's going to get the short end of the stick based on how games go. Just talk about that and how maybe Matt Painter's looked at to evolve into being more comfortable with this type of rotation, and maybe it isn't going to change that much because I think you're going to have you've got 10 guys you definitely can play in this situation.
Yeah, no, I don't think. I think the experimentation part of this is over. I think that what you're seeing right now is what you're going to get, and I think there's going to be games where Trey Kaufman-Renn plays more at the 4. There's going to be games where Mason Gillis and Caleb First play more. There's going to be games where things are working for Camden Heide. He's going to play more. Miles Colvin's going to keep getting his minutes, and he's going to have the chance to earn more and more. Where those minutes come from, that's not necessarily easy to say.
No.
There's going to be games where they need Ethan Morton out there for defense. There's going to be games where, it's going to be a Lance Jones game where he plays more. There's going to be games where maybe there's not a great matchup for somebody in the backcourt. Somebody gets in foul trouble. Somebody's going to play more than they ordinarily do or less than they ordinarily do. And so far, so good on that front. I mean, it sounds implausible because everybody thinks that you can't play this many guys enough, but you can play guys over the course of 30 games enough. It doesn't necessarily have to be everybody gets this amount of minutes every single game. As long as winning's enough for a lot of these guys, you should be good. And there are no red flags in that regard. You have 3 guys on this team who've been starters at Purdue and won a hell of a lot of games for Purdue in Mason Gillis, Ethan Morton, and Caleb First. And, I don't see any real causes for concern there as those guys come off the bench. I think winning's important to all of those guys. I think they get it. I think they understand it. As Painter says all the time, they don't have to like it, but I think they get it. So it's just going to be a game-to-game deal, and that can work. That is working. And I don't anticipate that changing. Everybody wants to, for whatever reason, everybody wants to tear down the starting lineup after every game. It's just not going to happen. It's not reality. It also doesn't matter all that much.
No, it just doesn't.
Trey Kaufman-Renn was -20 in the plus-minus versus Alabama by virtue of the fact that he was out there for those first 5 minutes when Alabama was just making all these threes. Now, a couple of those threes, maybe a quicker-footed guy might have been able to contest those shots better than Trey Kaufman-Renn was able to, but they weren't shooting that well because Trey Kaufman-Renn was on the floor. They were shooting that well because they were red hot.
Yeah.
And, when I went back and watched the game, I looked at the threes they took with First and Mason Gillis on the floor versus the threes they took with Trey Kaufman-Renn on the floor at the start. Not a whole lot of difference, except for the fact that the ones with Kaufman-Renn at the start of the game went in and the others didn't. So, sometimes there's not going to be a whole lot of separation there, even though it might look like somebody's way better than somebody else. But I think that it's just going to be one of those deals where everybody you can turn to is a good player. Everybody's deserving of being out there. And some games it's just going to be one guy, and the next game it's going to be the other guy. And, over the course of the season, it all evens out probably.
Critical thinking is a good thing when you look at where this, it's easy to, I think fans and observers want to make easy calls on the way, this is the way it is. This is exactly what we're seeing here. Yeah, -20 of Trey Kaufman-Renn against Alabama. And Matt Painter talked about that, and you've written about it too, that there is a lot more to it than meets the eye from that standpoint of what guys are going to contribute and win. I think one of the biggest things is going to be for Matt Painter is just pushing the right buttons at the right time and getting the guys in there that are doing the job. And you got 10 good options. That seems to me to be pretty clear.
Well, the one thing that really makes this work is winning.
Yes.
It's one thing to, not be playing as many minutes as you want to be when you're winning. It's another thing to not be playing as many minutes as you want to be when you're not winning. And you think you can make a difference, and you think that the difference between your team winning and your team losing is the fact that you're not playing as much as you should. As long as Purdue keeps winning, I mean, I don't anticipate any problems. And, if Purdue goes on a losing streak at some point, they just don't play well for a while. I still don't know if this whole thing goes sideways on him, but it's something you always have to be conscious of, and it's something he's always on top of. There's a reason in the springs and summers he doesn't always go all out to add a guy if he's got open scholarship. It's because he doesn't want that guy at the end of the bench who he cannot play being unhappy and complaining and, kind of bringing people down with him. And that's part of team building. And, people, when they look at rosters like a fantasy team, and they think you don't have enough of this, you don't have enough of that. If they just had one more scorer sitting at the end of the bench, that would change everything. It doesn't really work that way. And the one thing he's always been very careful about managing is making sure he doesn't have any malcontents at the end of the bench, because he's been through that. He's known what a bad attitude or two on your team can do, because he lived through 2012, 2013,
right,
etc. And I think he learned a lot from that, and I think that's just the way he's going to operate. But he's going to be very careful. He's going to be very proactive with these guys, I'm sure, about being honest with them and kind of keeping in their ears about what they need to be doing and things like that, and also making clear to them that you do deserve more minutes, but so does everybody else. So you're not necessarily in a one-of-one position here. So I mean that's part of the challenge of having a good deep team too, is just managing it. And so far so good.
Yeah, I think the truth is your greatest defense and asset, and Matt Painter's always had that reputation of being honest with his guys. And you're right, winning cures a lot of things if you're in that situation. And I think it seems to me that the chemistry in this team and this program has been extremely strong, and that's an asset as well. All right, so how do you see this thing go? And obviously you'll have a prediction on the site tomorrow as you have the preview up, but how you look? I mean, is this a one possession game and it's going to go down to the wire? How do you? I know that's what the odds makers probably are going to say, but what do you think?
Yeah, it's a toss up. I just think, Purdue's going to have a de facto home court advantage.
Yes.
I think Purdue's really good, and I think Braden Smith and Zach Edey are both playing at a level that, are going to make them really hard to beat. And I think that, athletically, Purdue stacks up in games like this now, whereas before you might have really worried about, some of these dudes Arizona has versus the guy who's going to be lining up next to him. But now you got your Lance Jones, you got your Miles Colvins, your Camden Heidi's, guys who look the same in uniform as the guys who play for these blue blood type programs. And I just think Purdue's up to it. I think they're up to it more than ever. They just have to not turn the ball over. They have to not crater from three. I wouldn't anticipate any of that stuff happening. But that's what those things are still very real in terms of concerns. I think Zach Edey, it might be a little bit liberating, for him to play against credible size.
Yeah.
Because I think he's better against traditional size than he is having to worry about stomping somebody who's way smaller than him or way skinnier than him, and things like that. And even though Purdue's played a ton of high majors now, he hasn't played against a really good big guy yet, a true big guy, somebody who he can actually have leverage over, things like that. And that might bring out the best in him. And the best of him is pretty damn good. And I think, you still have the best player in the country. And I think you have a second All-America level player now in Braden Smith, the way he's playing. As long as, Smith plays under control, doesn't turn the ball over too much. And if he can make jumpers in this game, the way Arizona defends, I think his jump shot can be a real difference maker in this game. So there's always some variance when you're dealing with jump shooting, but I think that he's proven himself that he's going to make shots. And I think that, Purdue's got enough going for it where it can be just a little bit better than Arizona here. I would worry about the way they defend and the physicality and the athleticism and the versatility they have on the perimeter and things like that. But I think Purdue's seen teams that are similar with all the SEC people they've played so far. And I just think Purdue's up to it. Now Arizona will get another crack at them in Vegas next year. So,
and then who knows what will happen come March/April as well. This is certainly a precursor prelude maybe to what an Elite Eight national semifinal could look like if you're Purdue and or Arizona.
Well, chances are, by the end of the week, or by the time Big Ten play resumes, chances are Purdue will have played at least one team that's going to be in the Final Four by the end of the year.
Yeah, I think it's
with the way the schedule's played out. I think Marquette's that good. I think Tennessee's that good. I think Arizona's that good, and we'll see what Gonzaga ends up looking like. But I think Purdue's played a ridiculous schedule.
Going to be to Purdue's advantage, one would think. And we have special guest Mark Carney, the chairman of the board, so to speak, with the Boilermaker Alliance, and of course Dave Neff. Dave Neff just hired as the president and CEO of Boilermaker Alliance. Dave, first, welcome to the Purdue community. You're going to you're hitting the ground running already, but welcome and congratulations on the new gig.
Thank you. No, it's been a very warm reception, and I felt the love from Boiler Nation this week. But we do have a tall task in front of us, and a lot of this is real time, as you know. So,
yeah, no doubt. Mark, talk about that process of getting to Dave without conducting a formal interview right now, but just in terms of what the board went through, and obviously you've had Matty D'Addario as part of your program as well, but to talk about the process as you got to Dave and what you're looking for out of his role.
Sure, thanks, Alan. So we went through the typical process of posting ads, and kind of casting the net earlier in the year, and really weren't satisfied with the candidate pool. And like most companies, we ended up retaining a search firm who, we set up a committee of the board, screened 7 candidates down to 4 candidates, the executive committee reduced the 4 candidates down to 2. And, Dave, I think, was heads and tails above the rest of the crew. I mean, we were absolutely pleased at the amount of interest that we had and the high profile of those candidates, but really felt like Dave's track record, both with the Pacers and Salesforce, as well as his growth activities, around nonprofits and participating in foundations, all of that sort of led us to believe that he was the right guy for the job. So we're pleased as can be, and he's hit the ground running. We got a fundraiser tomorrow. He was in Houston with the Coach Walters and Mike Babinski yesterday. So there's no moss on the rock here, as they say.
Yeah, Dave, when you look at this, and when you looked at this job, and obviously with your experience in sports with the Pacers, but also in your Indianapolis background, what intrigued you the most? What got you excited about this? Because change is the new constant in this world. I mean, it is. You're going to have to be able to deal with change on a daily basis. You understand that, but is that what intrigued you? What got you?
Yeah. Well, it's been funny to see the range of responses. As this has become public this week. Some folks are like, "Wow, brave new world," like sort of like questioning the move, and I'm like, "Hey, that hasn't scared me before." No, really, what sort of intrigued me, I'd say a few things. First is just my respect and admiration for the Purdue brand as a whole. Yeah. I think the last, decade plus, under the leadership of really Mike Berghoff, Mitch Daniels, now Mung Chang, Mike Babinski, Mark Carney on Boilermaker Alliance. I mean, everybody that I either knew or didn't know prior to getting into this process has just been super, super impressive, high character, low ego, want to get the job done. And I just think Purdue's brand, and this is not just me, I know there's actually data that backs this up, is one of the hottest higher ed brands in the country. And so that's one thing. I think the second is just, NIL is the cutting edge of college athletics. And so to be associated with a Big Ten conference school, let's be real, Big Ten and SEC is where all the action is right now in terms of the power conferences with the 4 West Coast schools coming in this late, next year to the Big Ten. That was super attractive. And then we've got to go build this thing. I mean, Mark and the rest of the board, they've got day jobs.
Yeah.
They're volunteers. They've been doing just an astronomical job to get us to where we are today. But I think a lot of this, and these are 2 things that are important to me, Alan, is it's about trust and it's about relationships. And so we have to have high trust in every interaction that we have with donors, corporate sponsors, coaches, administrators, athletes. And we have to, trust moves at the speed of relationships, or relationships move at the speed of trust, as I like to say. So there's a lot of work to do, but I just felt like it was a sort of one of these generational opportunities to be associated with something that's so new as an industry.
Yeah, as Dave said, Mark, the day job thing was, I don't know how you've been able to run your day job and do this at the same time, but this has continued to evolve, and it's like you said, it's changed from time to time. Sounds like things from the fundraising standpoint are heading in the right direction. Do you have a sense, even with collectives down the road, who knows where all this goes, but you feel like now, not only with Dave's hire, but also some of the support that you're starting to get, that things are definitely trending in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm from a regulatory kind of overarching perspective, Alan. I'm not going to profess to read the tea leaves. I don't think, given the requirement for federal legislation, we're going to get done in an election year, so we probably have a couple of seasons that we have to prepare for. I think basketball's in good shape. I think football last year, we were we didn't have the resources necessary to build depth in the roster. I think we had a good starting crew. Had some injuries, and this year we've got a lot more runway established. We still need all the help we can get from the Boiler Nation, in terms of memberships or donations, because I can tell you, we're getting looks at in the portal, good ball players, and the reason we're getting looks at the portal for good ball players is we've been able to, through our efforts, support a lot of big men. When Marcus Johnson looks at that lineman in the eye, it's a big man.
Yeah.
And so I think we've been able to help out on the line, and it all kind of starts with the line, as you know, Alan, and that support will give us, for wide receivers and running backs. And so we're if you say this second tier Big Ten school needs about $5 million for football, whereas that first tier maybe needs 10 to 15, we're on our way towards that second tier. But if people want to be in Indianapolis at the end of the year, we've got to have help. So, and that's Dave is on it, and we really need Bowler Nation stepping up here.
And the only thing I would add to that, Mark and Alan, and talking with Mike Berghoff and others, is we've got the scholarships, right? That's covered. We've got the facilities. We need the players, and this is a great opportunity if you care about Purdue athletics. I mean, the collective is the top way, I think, to really get engaged in this moment in time.
Yeah, and it's going to have to. It is the new reality of what's there and what can be out there. Now, the focus, obviously, right now, football, men's basketball, women's basketball, volleyball. In the old days, they called them the revenue sports. But to talk about that, you've got a women's basketball event on January the 13th. We can hit on that too. But these are 4 high-profile programs that men's basketball and volleyball are certainly knocking on the Final Four. That world, women's basketball has been a national champion over the years. Football, wants to compete in what is the most difficult league in the SEC. But when you add those 4 teams in there, it is going to be extremely competitive just to be able to keep your head above water. But talk about that and just that mindset and how Purdue fits into all of that.
So, in terms of our efforts, Alan, we have created champions on the board that have responsibility for each of the sports, and that seems to have worked better for us. We're very specific on the sports. There's a certain set of fans in each of those sports, that have been very generous to us, and so kind of broken it up, and that's worked for us. And I think we're out there talking to alumni. Alumni are in the sports are absolutely a key factor in us and in our capital campaigns. I think the other thing that we've got the membership program that sits alongside that, and obviously you guys have been a great partner for us in the membership model for exclusive content. We've started, I think, and doing a pretty credible job around experiences. So we've got for a certain level of membership, we've got the meetings with Matt, and we had 3 of the basketball coaches on Monday of this week that kind of went through what we did at Toronto. It's in the Spurgeon Club, but we encourage that you're going to get an intimate view kind of what the coaches think and that, and then as far as football goes, the portal's over at January 8th, so all eyes are on us, to get between now and then. In terms of regrettable loss, probably a couple, but there's good players on our team, and so retaining those players has been kind of job one, and then helping out, with who we think is going to help us on the offensive line and whatnot, and getting us in a position, to compete, is pretty much job one for us right now. So basketball's in good shape. Women's basketball's on its way. Obviously, women's volleyball had a great season, but there's still work to do because that team is young, and I know there's going to be opportunities for Coach Shondell and Coach Gerald's that we need to provide focus on. So,
all right. Well said, and like I said, it's hurting cats, but in a lot of ways, and being able to do that well. All right, last question, Dave, I'm with you, and this has maybe been an interview question. So, what in your skill set, your background, obviously with the Pacers, but also with Salesforce, and just that varied background, in looking at yourself, when you get a new gig, you do have to evaluate what your personal goals are, but what makes this a good match for you professionally down the road? Because you're right, you don't know how long these things are going to last. I think, Mark, you're exactly right that with an election year, it's doubtful that there's going to be a ton of legislation. But what makes you most excited about this opportunity from that standpoint?
Well, I would identify as somebody that brings a lot of entrepreneurial energy in terms of how I work and how I think, and having a bias toward action versus maybe at times some of a bigger company mindset where, things kind of move along and you're just sort of at the status quo day to day. This is a role where you can see progress daily, right? Yeah. It's not yearly, it's daily. And so that's motivating to me to see as we're, knocking down, whether in this near term, big gifts, big charitable gifts. I think at the same time, we've got to get the marketing machine, the content machine going, which is where you guys have been so helpful in terms of how we build this subscription base, this flywheel of memberships. I mean, I'd love to wake up in a year and have 6,000 members, not several hundred, but thousands. When you think about 600,000 plus living Purdue alum, I think 1% should be very achievable, right? To be members of the Alliance. And then as we start to ramp up the corporate sponsor piece, which I have a lot of background in, obviously from my Pacer days, from some of the board work I've done, from what I most recently did at Prolific, a consulting firm working with a lot of B2B businesses, as we sort of dial in on what are the assets that corporate sponsors receive as it relates to name, image, and likeness with sort of our walking billboards, our student athletes. I just think there's three main lanes that we have to get covered between the major charitable gifts, the membership or subscription model, and then the corporate sponsorship piece. So, it's going to take an army, and I've got a great board, and the JPC, the guys, the men and women at JPC have been nothing but supportive. I know there's a lot of folks out there. So if you want to get involved, I'm all ears. I've had people reach out, offer to help. So we're getting organized, and we're going to have a strong bias toward action here.
All right. Well, guys, thanks so much. Always interesting stuff. And you're going to admire both of your abilities to manage change and embrace it and move ahead. Like you said, I think Dave was very well said. It is a daily deal, and you can't look too far down the road. You got to take care of what's in front of you as well. Big day tomorrow. Purdue, Arizona will be fun night, fun event in Indianapolis. I'm sure, as Mark, I think he said earlier, that there'll be some of the Boilermaker Alliance activity, certainly from trying to get more and more people involved, and we look forward to that. We look forward to, obviously, GoldandBlack.com. We appreciate the relationship so far, and we're looking forward, like you, to having it grow. So, all right, we will take a 2-minute break here, and Elliot Bloom, somebody that Mark and Dave will know well, and we'll talk some Purdue basketball and all the stuff that's going on, not only just with Saturday's game against Arizona, but also what goes on behind the scenes in terms of building a schedule, ties into the Boilermaker Alliance, and just creating an interest and activity around Purdue sports, a big thing that men's basketball is delivering in a big way. We're with Elliot Bloom, Director of Men's Basketball Administration and Operations. A title and length, but worthy of the job this guy has done for a long time for Purdue. And he and I have good offline conversations. We're going to have an online one here today, and that's always a pleasure from my standpoint. Elliot, welcome to the show. And just another Friday, just another basketball game tomorrow when Purdue takes on Arizona.
Yeah, just another game, another season. No, it's a good time of year. It's an exciting time, a good time to be a Boilermaker, and looking forward to. I wasn't sure what game was going to be the highlight of this season, non-conference wise.
Yeah,
it just shows you never know. You schedule these things, and you never know how they're going to materialize. And this is certainly one that's got everybody's attention, not just among our fan base, but across the nation.
You have been places where you've seen it. Now, we've talked about this before in your past lives, not only being at Purdue, but also at Duke and in Kansas as well. Just talk about now, you guys have built yourself to a perennial, at least the last 3 years, and really longer than that. But in terms of that top 10 notion of what that's like, how much is that different now than it was, even is it kind of how you imagine it, having experienced it in your younger days? What is it like to be sitting on that perch and everybody trying to knock you off on a daily basis as well?
Yeah, it's I think, and I mentioned this to a group of John Purdue Club members in Toronto. There was a brunch there the day of the game that I spoke to some people there. They had a couple hundred people in attendance at our team hotel, and I told them kind of this very thing about building a program, and like, okay, what's that look like? Like, a lot of people throw that phrase around, but what exactly does that mean? And as someone who's been around it now for a long time and kind of been a couple hands on the rope pulling in that direction, I feel like it's all the things. It's a lot of things around the program that, like, for instance, this game on Saturday in Indianapolis, it's a sellout. I told this same story last weekend. We played Louisville down there one year, and I think it was the Wooden Tradition. And there was an ice storm that Saturday, and we walked out to take the floor, and there was a lot of red in the stands, and there wasn't a lot of gold and black. And it really hit us like, man, what do we have to do? And that was the team with Robbie Hummel and Etuan. So we had a good team that year. We ended up winning that game. And afterwards, I remember talking to some fans, and they said, well, yeah, the ice storm. And I said, well, Louisville had to drive through that same ice storm. Like that was a thing for them too. So it really kind of hit us in the face. Like, hey, we gotta put a product out there that you just can't refuse. And it's taken time, but I think over the last handful of years, we've gotten to that point. We've certainly gotten to that point in Mackey. We've gotten to that point in a lot of our MTE tournaments where now if I make a phone call to try to get into an event 3, 4, 5 years down the road, it's like, yep, let me put Purdue in as soon as we can. And that comes from our fans and the fans that travel, and the fact that they know that when Purdue shows up to the gym, we're going to have a few hundred fans in tow. That makes a huge deal. And that's what great programs do. That's what the Duke, the Carolinas, the Kentuckys, the Kansases, that's what they do. When they show up to gyms, they bring a ton of fans. They have a lot of interest around their program. They have that little number next to their name. And hopefully the lower the number, the better. That's what big time programs do. And as you try to grow your program, that's one of the things that you try to do. And to do that, you have to get players, and you have to have a very talented team year in, year out that can compete for big things. And we've done that the last handful of years. We're, as everybody knows, we're trying to climb that mountaintop at the end of the year, like every team in the country is. And you and I've talked about it before, that if you have all these things around your program and you build your program to a certain level, everybody's trying to scale the mountain. Well, you get to start a little bit higher on the mountain than other teams. The teams that are in the 300s in the net rating, they're starting way, way down there. We're starting a little bit above base camp. And when I first got here, we weren't. We were lower on the mountain as we try to climb that thing every year. So it's all those things you can do around your program to kind of put you in a position every year to get a great net rating, a great seeding in the NCAA tournament, and then make your run in March. And hopefully you win a lot of games along the way. And if you're fortunate, you can win a league tournament or a regular season conference title and have really good players and play in great games and make a lot of great memories and things for fans along the way. So that's all goes into building an elite program, in at least the way I look at it.
Yeah, you're an operations guy, but you're also a major role with the players on this team, because you just are ingrained in everything that goes on. Look at on Wednesday night, Chicago State beats Northwestern. This is the world of college basketball. Right, and I think it's not to get into psychoanalysis, but just the interesting part of that in terms of dealing with that uncertainty is you don't know. Yes, Purdue's playing Arizona on Saturday, but you're going to have to play Jacksonville State and Eastern Kentucky. And I know that's down the road, but that's just that mentality and how you guys deal with that as a staff. Is that anything's possible in this game, and you have to be wary of pitfalls, but you also have to look at opportunities, almost equal those out as you move forward.
No doubt. And I actually like that. Those always happen this time of year. You get a handful of teams that stub their toe because they're already on break and mentally they're probably somewhere else. Those always come up. Every year I keep a running list of those games. So you can bet that next week when we're prepping for, the Jacksonville and the Eastern Kentucky, those are going to get brought up, and I'll hand Coach Painter a list that'll have all those teams that, a list of those games. And he'll say, hey, it's not just lip service. Like, this happens year in, year out to teams that don't stay mentally focused until the last day of break. And then get away for 4 or 5 days and get your mind off of things. But until then, let's focus on the task at hand. And, we're in a day and age where young people, their attention's more divided than ever. I don't think I'm exactly breaking news by saying no. We're all guilty of that to some respect with our phones and everything, and our faces buried in our phone all the time. So it's a more of a challenge to keep people locked in. And I would also say that in this day and age, the way teams are assembled, you have teams that haven't been together as long. And so we've been very fortunate to be at the low end of turnover and the high end of retention over the last few years, and in all of college basketball, not just among Big Ten teams, but really nationally, we've had as low a turnover as you're going to find. And that's a big deal, because our guys now understand what's the way we operate, what's expected of them, how to approach each game, how to prepare for each game. And there's teams around the country that are still figuring that out. They're still learning about their head coach. They may have only played 8 or 9 games for their current head coach, and they're trying to figure out what makes him tick and what does he want from me as an individual player. We don't have a lot of those questions in our locker room. Our guys pretty much know what's expected of them, what Coach Painter wants, what our staff wants, how we go about our business. I said after we played Alabama, I said that's a really, really good team. And I think they're just going to get better and better as the year goes on. But they've got a lot of new pieces. They've played 8 or 9 games together this year. I have a feeling that in a few years you're going to see a lot of lobbying from teams to try to do a foreign trip every year, so teams can really try to gel quicker. They don't have to wait till September 25th to begin that process, because I think that's a real thing, and it's going to be more of a challenge year in, year out for teams that spend so much time in the portal to try to get their teams on the same page and solidified as quickly as they can.
One of the many hats you wear, we've talked, is scheduling, and that started. You guys went to Europe this year and competed, and it's been the process of that. I know goes years in advance, but you also have run a gauntlet here and somebody in some other podcast talked about the fact that you're not even going to, and this is not underestimating what you might see in the NCAA tournament, but when you start with Xavier, Gonzaga, Tennessee, who was it?
Marquette,
Alabama, Arizona. Hard to imagine it's going to be any more difficult in the NCAA tournament, no matter who you face. But talk about that design and knowing what your team is, or what you hoped your team would be at this point in time, and how that scheduling has worked out. There's some strategery, so to speak, in that process.
Yeah, and it started too going down to Arkansas and playing that exhibition.
Yeah.
That was a great lesson for our guys, and it was one too that I know Brian's documented it pretty well, that we didn't necessarily have a full prep for that game. That was a little bit by design. Not the worst thing to lose those exhibition games. I know sometimes fans hear that and they scratch their head and they can't understand that, and that's okay. It's not for them to understand. It's one of those things where going down there, no matter the outcome, if you win by 40, if you lose by 40, it was going to be a great experience for our guys, because for 2 reasons. You go into a real environment, a true road environment that we saw in Evanston.
Yeah.
But we haven't seen a true road environment like we will, coming up after the new year. But also the kind of team that Arkansas is, a long athletic team that plays with, 5 athletes on the floor at the same time. They get up and down, fast paced, defensively challenging, trying to take us out of the stuff that we do. That game really helped pay dividends for Xavier, who has one of the fastest paces of play in the country and got up and down. Gonzaga, same thing. Tennessee, same thing. Marquette, same thing. I mean, it's like a broken record. There's a lot of I don't want to say it's a trend, but it's kind of a trend in college basketball to really get up and down, a little bit more than normal, fast-paced offenses, things of that nature. You're seeing more teams go that route, and so for us, that was important to get exposed to that early. We knew the schedule was going to be loaded with teams like that. And the schedule was put together with big names. We can't take credit for all of it because Maui was kind of served up to us, right?
Yeah.
So we got in the Maui field a few years ago, but it happened to be a great year because all those teams happened to be having good seasons on this particular season. So it was great to get tested with a variety of those teams. Tennessee's more of a defensive-minded team. Alabama's more of an offensive-minded team. Both SEC teams that have a lot of athletes, well coached. So we feel like we've had a lot of different experiences. As we look at film leading into this game, Arizona might be the most talented team that we played to date. So another challenge, and a team that has probably the most talented front line of anybody we've seen so far. So yet, another new wrinkle that we have to kind of adapt to. It's safe to say that we'll get through this non-conference, and then when we get through the Big Ten, there will probably not be a type scenario or team that we won't have faced as we head towards postseason way down the road. So, all that stuff is really great to prepare you and stuff for March, but it also challenges you going into the Big Ten season. We've said, Coach Painter said it as long as he's been here. If you can compete for a Big Ten title, you're going to be able to compete for a high seed and compete to get to a Final Four. And that's at the end of the day what we want.
Yeah. David Neff and Mark Carney were our last segment guests. NIL, collectives, all these things that you're a guy that always flies the jet, as Gene Katie would say, looking 5 years ahead. But I don't think in 2018 you saw this happening as smart as you are. But tell me about what David just getting started in this role as the president and CEO of the Boilermaker Alliance, but you've had a little bit of time, even though it's still a moving target, all of it is. But where are you seeing this, and what do you think is really going to be important? If you're David Neff in this job, what does he have to deliver that will help not only Purdue men's basketball, but athletics as well?
Yeah, I think, you're going to have to be nimble, number one, because, these seismic changes that have happened at the NCAA level, if any one of those changes would have come to fruition, it would have been a lot of dealing with, let alone all of them at the same time. We had conference realignment, you had the portal, you had name, image, likeness, you have the NCAA who, let's be honest, President Baker's probably the Hail Mary to try to save the NCAA in its current structure.
Yeah.
If he can't get done what he wants to get done through the power of 5 conferences or 4 conferences now, dissolve the NCAA and go their own way. There's a lot of TBDs. And so I think Dave and Mark and, Dave's taken over now is going to have to be really nimble and be willing to be able to, learn how to pivot quickly and move on to the next thing if he needs to. There's obviously talk of some legislation in Congress of trying to get a little bit of a hold on NIL and moderate that to a certain extent. I don't know if that'll be successful. If their track record's any indicator, we may be waiting a while.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff that, could change down the road, but in the immediate right now here, at Purdue and how he can help make an impact, it's obviously getting funding and getting that base growing in the collective. There's some other collectives around the country that have a lot of members that necessarily don't give huge amounts, but collectively it turns into a nice amount. And I think if there's anybody that's watching this or, is a Purdue supporter and wants to see us continue to be successful, wants to see football, get players and compete at a high level as they move into, the West and East now being all part of one and a new phase in what Big Ten's and what the Big Ten's going to look like. Consider, jumping in on the collective and helping us out in that regard. And it doesn't have to be a huge amount of money. I think there's room in this space for that Purdue grad who lives in, out in Las Vegas and he can't get back or she can't get back for games all the time. So really, what's my incentive to be a high-level John Purdue Club member if I'm not getting the points and the tickets and the seating and the parking? I'm not coming back for games. The collective's a great way to help, and it's a great way to kind of have a donation like kind of Netflix style where, it's a monthly installment and you really don't miss it at the end of the day, unless you really scrutinize your credit card bill, and then you might. But if you can do it and you can help out in that regard, a little bit goes a long way. And I think that's one of the goals that they're going to have is to continue to grow that number and be able to support the teams.
All right. One of the couple more questions as we come to the end of this segment, but want to talk about, again, juggling that notion of Washington, Oregon, UCLA, and USC. What do you see scheduling looking like? Is that, I know there's still a lot of moving parts in that, I would assume, as you get to 24, 25 in that first year of those teams being in this league. Yeah. How do you see that landing, or what needs to be done to get that figured out?
Yeah, the first thing we got to get figured out as a league is how many conference games we're going to. Do we want to stay at 20? Do we want to go to 21, 22? What's that going to look like? I think they're getting closer to a decision there that will at least give us the blueprint. We're scheduling for next season right now. And so with the Gavitt games going away, the ACC Challenge going away, there's a bigger challenge on our end to try to get some home and homes established so we can continue to see good teams for us to play, but also good teams for our fans to see in Mackey every year. We've always tried to get at least one marquee non-conference home game that we feel like would be an attractive game to get fans to and things of that nature. So we're going to continue to work towards that, but it really helps to know how many league games you're playing before you get too far down the road on that stuff. And we hope to have an answer relatively soon in that regard. And that will allow us to know kind of how to schedule accordingly. The other piece is just who we're going to play, how many times. If you stay at 20 games, everybody's going to have a protected rival, and then you're going to have a lot more single plays than you would this year. This year I think we have 6 single plays. We'll go to more, obviously, as you add more teams. And so there'll be some years where there's an imbalance of the schedule. But that's just the way it's going to be. People are going to have to get over that. And if you win the league on a year where you maybe played a little less saltier schedule, so be it. Don't apologize. Take your trophy and celebrate it. And on the flip side of that, if you played all the big boys in a certain year and you thought maybe you had a little unfair slate, that's part of it. That's the new day and age we're in. So, you try to worry about the things you can control. About going west, I think that we're going to have a lot easier than the teams out west. They're going to have to come our way a lot more. I think the league is going to be pretty creative in terms of working with people and with teams and to create scenarios that work. What I mean by that is if there's a West Coast school that says, you know what, based on our semester setup, and I don't know if those schools are quarters or semesters, I'm not sure. But let's say they say, you know what, we're actually off from classes this week. Why don't you send us east and we'll play 3 games. We'll do a 3-game swing and knock out Maryland, Rutgers, and Penn State. We'll do it all in one swing, and then we'll head back west. If they would propose those kind of things and it works in the schedule and the TV structure, and that's a lot of things, a lot of boxes to check. But if that happens, I could see the league, partnering with schools and helping them out in that regard. I think when we go west, it sounds like we're probably going to go to LA and play both teams, or go north and play both teams. But there probably won't be a scenario where you go west in January and then west again in February. I think they're going to have it set up where you're going to go west one time and be able to knock out whoever you're going to knock out, and then head back and get back acclimated to stuff around here. So that's all how it's kind of sounding right now. I know some of it's up in the air, and it'll be fascinating to see how it plays out. And we'll be getting to those teams really well, because they'll be my first phone call when I ask them what hotels we're staying at and how things work out there on the travel. So
I think AI is going to come in handy. I don't know how you figure just the logistics of all that is going to be. Somebody's going to have to plug that in somewhere and see how that can work out. It's fascinating on that set. Last question. Obviously, Indianapolis is a big focus of Purdue athletics, Purdue University. Clearly, we know that already. Mm-hmm. And your desire to continue, obviously, when you have a marquee game like a Saturday against Arizona, it doesn't get any bigger than that. But that I assume is, even through all this 21, 22 games or whatever you can play in the Big Ten, still going to remain a focus of yours to have a presence in that city.
Yeah, we always want to get down to Indy. And I think the Indy Classic's getting some momentum. I mean, it's helped that, us in Arizona have sold the place out for this year, which will be a big day. Ball State, Indiana State, and the other game of that. As we talk with the Indianapolis Sports Corp and trying to continue to grow that, I hope our fans feel like that's an annual thing that we should be doing, because we certainly feel that way. And I love hearing the stories of when fans talk about how they make that part of their annual tradition, whether it's going to Indy and going out to eat, watching us play, tying in some shopping to it, whatever it might be. That's kind of the premise behind it. We always enjoy it. It's the end of finals week. Our guys can kind of exhale and relax a little bit academically. We head down to Indy to play that game. It's always kind of been a good time of year for us. We hope our fans feel the same way. It certainly seems like they do, at least for this weekend. We hope next year can continue. It will be hard to continue to get opponents the caliber of Arizona. That's just the blunt truth. The reason being is that with Arizona, we're going to return that game next year in Las Vegas. And what ends up happening is we can't return a game every year, because then you start stacking up returns, and then it eliminates chances to bring good teams to Mackey, because those have to be returned as well. So there'll be some years where we'll do returns and you'll see a really good opponent. There'll be other years where you'll see a good opponent, maybe not top 5 opponent, but you'll see a good opponent. And those are probably the years we don't have to return that game. So it'll be a little bit of a mix over the next few years, but it's certainly a game that we want to continue to keep on the schedule.
Yeah, no question. It is going to be a as big a game as Purdue has had in terms of at least numbers next to your name, 1 versus 3. is never happened in Purdue basketball history. So that's a cool thing from that standpoint, at least from the Boilers being ranked third heading into number one opponent. All right, we wish you well and safe travels always. And
I did want to bring something. I did want to bring up something.
Yes, so go ahead, by all means.
You talked about the beginning, growing a program, and this will be a little bit of a plug too. So it's not totally selfless. So this year at the end of May and June, we're starting a fantasy camp, Purdue basketball fantasy camp. We announced it, I guess, about a month ago on social media. And again, that's another one of those layers to a program. And a handful of programs do this across the country. But this will be a 4-day, 35 and older camp. It'll be for basically anybody who's really into basketball or really into Purdue. If you check either of those boxes, this will be a camp that'll be right up your alley. We're going to have guys come in, put them up over at the Union. They're going to get a ton of Purdue gear. Our coaches are going to coach the camp. We're going to have a lot of former players back. When we set this up, it was right around the beginning of the year when we announced it, because Robbie Hummel had our opener against Samford, and he said, Bloom, that fancy camp, what a great idea. And I could tell what he was hinting at. I go, well, dude, you're on my list to call because I want you to come back and work it. He goes, oh, great. Because I was going to ask you, can I come back and work it? So we're going to get a lot of our former kind of player legends to come back and work, help coach. You're going to be immersed in our locker room, film room, training room, play competition in Mackey and Cardinal Court, practice with our coaches. It'll be really, really cool. We're going to have some evenings where we'll have some nice dinners. We're going to go out to Coach Painter's house for a cookout one day. So it'll be a true behind-the-scenes Purdue basketball experience. So I know there's a lot of your readers and listeners and watchers and everybody out there that are obviously diehards. So if anybody wants to give a great Christmas gift, that would be make a Purdue fan's year, I would think.
All right. Well, they can do that. Is there any link or any place to go just yet for that?
Yeah, PurdueBasketballCamps.com has all of our summer camp information, and that's on there as well. It takes you to the Purdue Fantasy Camp. PurdueBasketballFantasyCamp.com is our site. You can print off an application there and send it to the basketball office. And we're getting them coming in right now and getting a pretty good list together. I talked to a gentleman out in Hawaii that was with the John Purdue Club. And he said, I think I might be getting a little bit older. And I said, well, we're not having professionals come here. Like Rob's going to be working the camp. He's not playing in the camp. I said, so it'll be a good time. And our coaches are all looking forward to it as well.
Just make sure your liability insurance is paid up. I'm talking about for the members. I'm 29 years too old for that. I think it sounds like a great idea and a fun group of people too, though. Whoever gets a chance to do that will have an absolute blast, I'm sure. So I appreciate that shameless plug. It's not shameless at all. That's very relevant to our group. So anyway, wishing you happy holidays, and you and your group with the Purdue men's basketball always treat us and Brian and Carm and everybody else about as good as any outfit can do, and we appreciate that so much. We want to thank State Farm agent Trent Johnson at trentismyagent.com and XXX on the hill, but on the level of Purdue tradition since 1929. The good folks at WLFI, also Gordon Jackson and Mary. Wish you happy holidays. We'll be back with our weekly shows. We might even have Mr. Bloom on to talk a little more about that fantasy camp late in the season, but we'll be back with our weekly show second week of January as well. So have a great holiday, everybody. Thanks again for watching and listening, and we'll look forward to seeing you after the new year in 2024. So again, thanks so much.